Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with more Batgirl. Our heroine has had kind of a rough few issues. Some CIA agents know what she looks like, though can't find any record she exists. She saved a guy from being murdered and framed, but he ended up getting killed anyway. Batman gives her her own cave, but it kind of leaves her without a chance of a life not all about crime fighting. And then she experienced the quickest situation in which she'd be okay with killing again. Maybe these next few issues will ease up on her a little. Maybe. Issue 16's cover sees an awkward moment as Cass has just finished smacking around some guy, only for his kid to stumble onto the scene. With his pet rat, apparently. I guess he's supposed to be wearing a wool cap, but it looks like it's a barrister's wig. We begin with a group of children playing what I guess is their generation's kick the can, throwing rats in the air and seeing if they land in or out of bounds upon a fatal landing. I'd assume that they were all impoverished kids, but that one's in a suit. He kind of looks like a Cabbage Patch Kid cosplaying as the Question. The next player up to rat takes his turn, throwing the next rodent into the air, but it doesn't land. And that's an awfully clean circle when you consider they mentioned the last rat landing half out of bounds. Is there one kid on cleanup that happens to work really fast? Anyway, that's when Batgirl lands onto the scene, scaring the youngsters off, and having saved the rat, lets it run free. You know, if she hadn't been rebooted, this intervention could have gone a long way in solidifying a pact with Clan Hamato, but no! The only one left is the boy from the cover, apologizing for the twisted little game and asking Batgirl to follow him. The lad, Tim, brings her to his rundown apartment, saying he overheard his pop planning a robbery and left with his guns. Handing the vigilante the location doesn't help because Cass can't read. Fortunately, the kid doesn't get smarmy about it like some would, so he reads the location off to her, an address to a federal bank, and insists his father isn't bad, just too focused on money, asking that he be stopped before he does something bad. At the bank, the robbery is already underway, and the perps begin talking about what they'll do with their cut. Jake, a man in ratty clothes and a dirty six-shooter, says he'll probably pay some bills. A guard surprises them and Jake shoots him dead, something the suddenly appearing fourth member, a man in black and gold chains, didn't think he had it in him to do. I guess Jake didn't think so either because he's pretty rattled by his actions. As they meet up with 3 additional members, they've already cleaned out the safe, the 7 each getting his own cart of cash. The guy in gold chains, Chaco, shoots one of the gang in the head because he apparently got too greedy and stole some traceable jewelry on the sly. That's when they notice Jake is missing. Hey, you got one team member stealing extra stuff, and now a sudden slot opening up on the team, 7 carts of stolen money for 6 thieves. That's a lot of paperwork, and someone's got to do it. Bank robbers have some kind of bureaucratic process, right? Jake's run off, throwing away his gun before finding himself in a dead end, one that's going to become figurative and literal as his cohorts catch up to him. He tells them that they don't want to know what he's feeling, likely that of taking another human life, but they don't care given the size of their score. Not sure how well Jake knows these guys. They could be just fine with it. We already know Chaco had no qualms about icing Tony. Cass arrives to take them out and tells Jake to go, guessing he's Tim's father, but he realizes he needs to pay for what he's done. She asks what about his son, but Jake doesn't have one. She must be thinking of Chaco's kid. Oh, so the blonde son of a criminal asks you to help his dad, and you assume it's the first blonde criminal you find. I thought we were past this kind of prejudice. I need a moment. With those 2 gunmen taking too long, Chaco decides it's time to move out, offering their take to the last remaining men, swaying them rather easily. But they don't last much longer than their friends when Cassandra arrives. Again thinking of Tim as she confronts his actual dad this time, she's much angrier now, knocking out a couple of teeth, one of them gold, of course, but stopping herself, probably feeling she's hurt him enough. Later, Chaco's being wheeled into an ambulance as Tim watches, until Batgirl comes to take him home. Tim asks if his old man really is a bad person, and Cass confirms that yes, he is. But Tim isn't, trying to comfort the boy who just so happens to be standing in the circle where the kids were tossing rats.
This was a really bittersweet story. It's always fun to see Cass knock some heads, but both her and Tim got a sad wake-up call that sometimes their preconceptions can be off.
Through young Timothy, both the reader and Cassandra believed that his dad was just a desperate guy looking to support his family, driven to do things he'd rather not. The naivete of a child was our launching point for this tale, and the misdirection was pretty well done, though it's kind of hinted at early who Tim's pappy really is, since he says he took his guns, plural, and we see the leader of the gang with 2 when he first appears. Turns out the boy that lived in a filthy apartment, wore tattered clothes, and had to resort to animal cruelty for entertainment was the son of a guy in clean clothes, gold paraphernalia, and looked like he showered before the heist. To say nothing of their difference in conscience. I guess that's one reason why Cass thought Jake was Tim's dad, because they both seemed to be good at heart, whereas Chaco, not so much. There's certainly something to be said about Tim standing in the rat death circle as he realizes his dad really was just a greedy jerk. A piece of his heart, his soul, his childhood died tonight. And we all know how Cass can relate to fathers who aren't exactly the best.
Though I can't help but wonder about the kid's mom. We get no indication that she's in the picture, so taking him home, while a very sweet gesture, seems like maybe not the best place when the police were right there to take care of him. Social services will probably show up to take him anyway, but I guess that means Cass just kind of delayed the inevitable. She couldn't have been taking him home to Wayne Manor because they already have a Robin named Tim.
Issue 17's cover has Cassandra in a battle-ready stance in front of a large circle with our old pal Smokey, the sinister CIA agent, and some of his cronies. We begin with B-Girl watching a woman run from a thug she's fighting, so transfixed that she pauses long enough to take a punch, but immediately reciprocates. And that wasn't the only goon she dropped, apparently. Bats was watching, and later, after some synchronized sparring, he asks if she's distracted, perhaps bored by her mission, but she's quick to say that isn't the problem. She's not exactly sure what's wrong.
My guess is that she's received a vision from the future. A very, very depressing vision from the future.
Oracle calls with some exciting news. She's found the complex that holds the physical evidence of what Cassie looks like, and its blueprints, guard schedules, every bit of information necessary to break in. Cass infiltrates, takes the evidence, while Babs erases their digital files, and she's free to leave her cave again. Then Batman says it's a low priority, since her face alone doesn't give them any real information.
You know, she has been out and about Gotham before all this happened, meaning that chances are her face has shown up just by happenstance on one security camera or another at, the local fast food joint or a bank. Not sure how much banking Cassie does, but it's there. It's a possibility. And you'd think that a paranoid dude like Bats that plans for every eventuality would have thought of that.
Barb continues that they also have a blood sample from which they've created a genetic profile that could be matched to a sample from, say, a Gotham crime scene, and they could discover she's Batgirl, so Pointy Ears' tune changes. Before long, Cass is at the facility, not in costume or any disguise, as Oracle advises her to swipe an extra key pass to copy, but instead swipes it from an active guard, evading his sight as he turns around from the sound of the gadget Cass uses, and then she replaces the card. When breaking into a government facility to steal back one's anonymity, I guess she's got to do something to spice things up. She walks between the upper walls of a hallway that's conveniently narrow enough for her to suspend herself above the security cameras. Extra convenient that this place doesn't have any corner-mounted cams. She finds evidence storage, gets her blood and videotapes. Babs initiates a short circuit to burn any trace of her theft, and the mission's complete. But Cass is eager to get back to Gotham where she's needed, echoing Batman from earlier. And that's just who Oracle calls, interrupting something. Given the steam, I'm only guessing, I think Bats is training his bare hands to withstand the intense cold of dry ice.
You know, the chemically treated substance that can give you frostbite if you touch it, like he's doing. I have a little bit of experience with this stuff, having worked in the frozen portion of retail, and I don't think I should have to say this, but I will anyway. Don't try that at home.
Barbara is worried about her successor, taking easily dodged attacks and spending all her time in her private Batcave. A 17-year-old needs downtime, fresh air, but Bruce says she only cares about the mission. Then his attention is on Agent Masters, the CIA rogue that killed the sharpshooter Cass was protecting. Bats has been keeping an eye on him in case any bigger fish were around to catch, but hadn't considered the effect it'd have on Batgirl, and decides she needs to see justice done. Oracle thinks that's all well and good, but she should also instruct the young woman to get some sun, or she'll spend the rest of her life underground.
I mean, next thing you know, she'll be starting a YouTube channel no one watches, reviewing comics and ranting ad nauseum about really stupid retcons. Wait a minute.
Cassandra climbs out of the sewers into the very sunlight Oracle's prescribed, walking among the colorful denizens of the city. Later in her lair, she's caressing a rose, though I'm not sure where she got it. But more concerning is that some of the inks make her look more like Edna Mode than I'd like. Anyway, Batman enters, so it's flowers down, because it's time to go after Masters. He's on the balcony of his office, smoking, then drinking. Weird thing, this looks like Cassandra's shadow, but it looks a lot like it has eyes. It's obviously not her in shadow, it's her shadow, yet the eyes. But moving on, she surprises the agent, whispering, "Blowback," in his ear. He turns and empties his revolver, missing every single shot, and she calmly takes the weapon and clocks him. She holds the gun a moment, I doubt thinking of using it since it's empty. Rather, she seems contemplative, dropping it and looking out at the city. We briefly go to her cave and her plant, where she calls Oracle, and the two later meet outside a cafe during the daytime. Bringing Masters to justice didn't make her feel better about the man that died, and the lack of a question mark here probably isn't helping matters. But Babs says that still feeling bad about the loss of life shows that she's human. Justice is important, but not more so than life. The comic ends with Barbara putting the rose in a glass, saying it needs water and lots of sunshine, and the Batgirls, past and present, just enjoy the beautiful day before them.
The rose is an obvious parallel to Cassandra, though thankfully not obnoxiously so. In need of more than just the mission, or only what that requires. With Masters apprehended and his data on Cass culled, she too can flourish in the garden of the outside world, so long as someone puts her in a medium-sized plastic water receptacle. Though I'm still not sure where she got the rose from in the first place. Did she buy it? Was it a cave-warming gift? Because we haven't seen her base since the debut in issue 14. This is probably going to bother me more than it should.
Finally, issue 18, where the cover seems to show Tim Drake losing a game of hide-and-seek. I mean, between his posture and the grimace on his face, I'd say it's at least a possibility. And I like the touch of a bird standing just above Robin and a bat hanging upside down just below B-Girl. The story kicks off with cookies.
Bat milk and cookies for everyone. Bat milk?
The treats are being purloined by Cassandra, looking a lot younger and more Dr. Seuss designed than normal. Then things take an extra weird turn when her bat family starts calling her a killer, and she's not grasping a cookie, she's grasping the neck of the guy she killed, and her present-day self is now throttling her dad, who says he can't fool them all forever.
Read more in the soon-to-be classic children's book, If You Give a Bat a Cookie, She'll Want to Forget the Traumatizing Murder She Committed.
Her alarm wakes her up from the not-so-pleasant dream, and it looks like she fell asleep in costume, which is convenient, so she's that much quicker to be off on patrol. She ends up at the pier, following a guy in a trench coat, though no explanation as to why she's following him, and the guy's expecting payment for a recent job done for one Mr. Vink. Only he gets betrayal instead of money.
Not just because they plan to kill him, but also, it's just more tax forms to fill out later.
Batgirl intervenes, and wouldn't you know it, Robin just happened to crash the very same goon meeting. Trenchcoat bolts for his car and fires at a gas tank to make his getaway extra explodey. And despite being right next to the detonation, Tim survives, while Cassandra has finished off the last of the gunmen. Bird Boy awkwardly hands her a tracking device to catch the assassin and heads out on his own, since he's after Vink. Cass is left standing there with an understandable "what was that" expression.
It couldn't have been something she said, because all she said was your name, dude.
Wacky sitcom shenanigans coincidence, they end up at the same place again, because Trenchcoat never actually got paid, so went to the boss's home. The pair bust in, do the standard thug punching routine up the stairs, before finding a guy, Bossman Vink, tied up, saying his daughter's been abducted. Robin wastes no time suggesting they split up, and on the next page, Cass exits directly out the window, because of course she does. Trenchcoat has the girl in one arm and a revolver in the other, the latter of which he fires when Batgirl confronts him. He drives off as Cassandra has stayed put, being shot in the shoulder, same shoulder as the CIA agent too. And Tim can only wonder how that happened.
Probably an editorial mandate from Dan Didio, written on the skin of a baby seal, in the blood of an intern that put too much cinnamon in his coffee.
In actuality, the killer, known as Deadeye, has cybernetic implants in his eyeball and spine, which take over for his aiming. At least that seems to be what Drake gleans from his zooped-up Game Boy Advance. Since all the killer has to do is think about his target for the tech to take over, Cass's body-reading ability was of little help. As she partially disrobes to remove the bullet with her bare hands, Tim sees large exit wounds on her back, which Cass attributes to training with Kane. Scars just got bigger as she grew older. Robin picks up a call to Vink from Deadeye. I guess he had the forethought to plant a bug on the guy's phone while his fellow sidekick was getting shot. He wants $1 million in 4 hours, dropped from a bridge to a boat with the killer and the girl waiting. Once he's paid, the girl will be left on the shore. Rob figures they can scope out the area to surprise their foe, but Batgirl disagrees. She thinks he'll kill the girl because her dad broke the rules. He'll tie her up, blindfold her, and with her dad so high up on the bridge, he won't be able to tell if she's alive or not. She's pegged Deadeye as just the kind of assassin who'd do something like that.
Cassandra doesn't just read people, she speed reads people.
They manage to track Deadeye's location, finding he has some buddies on lookout, so Tim thinks his injured coworker should run interference, but she's like, nah, crashing in and confronting her quarry in a restroom. He threatens the girl, but turns the gun on Batgirl when she charges. She punches him out, then breaks his hand for good measure as the hostage makes a run for it. As Deadeye is hauled away, and we assume the girl is either returned home or put into Child Protective Services because Daddy's a crook, Robin makes a confession. His childhood was tame compared to Nightwing's or Batman's, and Cassandra's puts both of theirs to shame. She was molded to become an assassin, but made herself into one of the heroes, which kind of intimidated him, and why he'd been avoiding her lately. He apologizes and will no longer let her past affect how he treats her. They shake hands as friends. And only friends, got it, you crazy shippers?
Well, would you look at that? Tim was evasive, but not condescending. He owned up to his failings and was penitent. He's not bribing her with candy like she's a 5-year-old moron. Almost like he's not a complete and utter arrogant jerk.
You could tell Tim was being standoffish, and as the story progressed, it never touches on why, and rereading this, it got me wondering if they'd explain it well enough with what few panels they had left. But it all came together very nicely. Robin's error was succinctly summarized, understandable, and didn't need a lot of bloated dialogue or time taken out of their investigation or rescue efforts to prolong any tension. The friendship isn't so much quickly cemented as it begins to blossom. I wasn't sure how Cass managed to overcome Deadeye's aiming, though. It almost looks like she has another bullet wound here, but, there's no blood. I noticed Daz spray painted on the billboard behind them at the end, same word as on the other Tim shirt in issue 16. I'm guessing it's an artist tag put there for fun, but Googling hasn't yielded anything concrete. As for the dream at the beginning, I'm no expert, but I'd wager the cookie theft represents an immature Cassandra doing something she views initially as harmless with her skills, which then turns into the realization that it's something quite serious, taking a life. The action she took without proper context, which still haunts her. If I'm right, it's a pretty abstract way to do it, but hey, it's just my interpretation.
I will admit the story does yada yada a couple of details, and personally, I would have had Robin and Batgirl interrogate Vink for that information on Deadeye instead of whatever computer Tim was using. But hey, that's me. It's nice to see something that can pose a match against Cassandra's body reading ability, in this case cyber implants, and while it shouldn't be something to be overused, a capable writer can make it an interesting challenge for her, so long as it's more clearly shown how she surmounts it. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.